I am Simone from Play with Food. Today I am here to talk to you about food jagging. What I wanted to do first is check that you know a little bit about me. So I run Play with Food, and Play with Food runs also a blog. Where I write mostly about fussy eating, a range of different recipes, tools to get you motivated or started on a pleasant, happy mealtime journey. I also work part-time doing feeding therapy, where that's where we take our more problematic feeders and we help them in a more concentrated environment. So what I like to do is take some of my skills and training in more complex matters and bring those tools to the everyday blogosphere and make that information available to you. So I am hoping that you are all seeing this, and if you want, post in a message in the chat wings. I'm just going to quickly put this. I'm just putting up a message there, so if anyone wants to write back, they can. I'll hopefully be able to see it. Today I'm not set up as well as I normally am because my children were not as interested in going to bed as I would have liked them to be. So what we're going to do is going to continue on anyway. So as I said, Play with Food is about taking some of my training and my experience with problematic feeders and bringing that to the forefront in a palatable format so that anyone who might be going down that path of, oh, what's happening with my child? Why is fussy eating starting to happen in our house? What are we going to do about it? This is where your point of call is. So I'm definitely here to be your cheerleader, help you out, get to know all about you, what you need from me, and we'll go from there. So that's a bit about who am I and what do I do. And one of the things I wanted to talk about first was, where does food jagging actually come from? So food jagging is something, what I say is something like a food rut. This is where kids will always request the same foods. I'm saying kids, it can be anyone though. This can be a problem that extends for over a lifetime if it's not dealt with. So this is when we sort of say, okay, we had a certain number of foods we were eating regularly, and little by little we're getting further and further down in our repertoire. We're not eating as many things anymore. We've got a lot of aversions to other things until we get to the point where we're pretty much in a rut. We're not going to move on from there. For some people, this doesn't impact their life so much, and so it may not be a worry. Depending on how food adventurous and food curious your family is, this can actually be a really difficult thing for families to do. So in my Happy Mealtimes e-course, that's why we start with talking about eating competency. What is it that you guys set as goals to have as families? Because everybody comes to fussy eat or approaches fussy eating from their point of view. So what will be stressful for one set of family is quite different to another type of family. So knowing what your goals are at meal times and with the types of foods you want to be eating is very important aspect of knowing how you're going to go forward from there. So basically, based on that, I'm still going to talk into that, just that food rut today, and talking about people who want to get out of it. So even though it may not impact your life, or there may not be a be-all and end-all for you, that's okay. You still might want to know these techniques. Sometimes it is actually really quite restrictive on your family, especially if your family like to eat out a lot, and if you're relying on hot chips being on the menu and they're not there, what are you going to feed your children because they're in that rut of only wanting hot chips. So that's an example. So this is what a food jag is. So it's when we are just wanting the same things. But what I wanted to talk about tonight is the root cause of food jags. So why do we actually have food jags? So there's a lot of root causes for fussy eating behaviours, and I really implore you to understand what the root cause is for your child, because reading a list about fussy eating isn't going to help you if you don't know why they're being fussy, if that makes sense. So as much as those articles that have 17 ways to cure fussy eating float around the internet, they're really not going to help you if your situation is because of a medical reason that your child doesn't. So say they have started life with silent reflux, which has big impacts on the whole family, mental health and everything like that, because it's such a hard thing to get your head around when the baby's crying so much. So this has painful memories associated with it, and you've had a issue with effectively fussy eating since day dot because this reflux problem has been happening. So obviously your root cause for fussy eating can be very different to a child who has undergone surgery and then had some psychological implications as to why they're not eating things. There's other issues as well with kids and their sensory overload for the day. And this is one of the root causes I really want to talk about tonight. Sensory impact and overload can often make dinner time pretty much tragic for a lot of families. So I'm just going to clear that. Okay, so I'm going to continue. I'm hoping that people are seeing me and it's all going well. I just thought I'd have a double check to see what's happening on the chat wing. So from what I can see, everything's looking pretty good. Fingers crossed. All right, so where I got to, the sensory overload. So this is where we want to take an example here. So I brought my cup along today, and with the cup, this is your child maybe at the start of the day. So we've got a brimming cup where we're like, okay, I'm going to have a whole lot of sensory inputs through my day. So first thing might start off with, I woke up and the dog was barking a lot. So I had a lot of auditory, sensory inputs. I'm feeling a bit agitated. I'm a little bit all over the place, and I'm feeling like I've already had this, and then, oh, I've got to sit down and eat breakfast. Okay, where's my mind? What's been happening? So, you know, we might find breakfast is okay for some kids, and especially because kids might always go for what is known as an easy food. So foods that don't take a lot of work to eat. So these things will be, goes in the mouth, doesn't change taste or texture too much as it goes through the mouth in the process. Breakfast cereals are notoriously easy foods. Toast is actually an easy food. It doesn't change as we eat it. Pancakes are an easy food, doesn't change as we eat it. So if you get the gist, breakfast is usually a pretty no-brainer when it comes from sensory inputs. If we're putting down a bowl of raw veggies at breakfast, we might have a little bit more sensory processing to get us through that meal. Okay, so then we're busy getting ready for school, off to school, we're running around playing with our friends, we've got a whole lot more stuff to be processing. So I've got sound, sight, smell, you know, so many things tactile that I'm dealing with, and also so many distractions. So yeah, my sensory bucket's getting a little bit fuller. Lunch comes around and I've got that potentially, I've had some really good proprioceptive input. My feedback loops are happening and I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm ready for this task. I've been prepared for it. I know that bell is a bit of a conditional cue as to what's happening. They have that routine. So we get conditioned into when we know things are happening. So we've got a lot of good processes that counteract that sensory input happening at school. So we might find kids might eat better at daycare, or they might eat better at school, or the other way, the distraction of the other children in the room might push them the other way, add more sensory inputs and overloading for them. So bearing in mind we've got all this happening for our kid. The one thing for us is we've got this vessel, and I've chosen one that we can't see. We don't know all of the ins and outs for what's happening in that sensory world for our kids. This bottle might be all run out, or it could be full of a whole lot more coming at them. So we don't know how much it's impacting our kids along this scale. So it's just going to keep going. So today we get home from school, we've had to go to karate, or we've had to go swimming lessons, we've had a whole lot more inputs happening. And then we might want some chill out time because we're starting to feel like we're brimming. But instead of getting chill out time, boom, here we go. We've got a whole plate of veggies and all these things that I'm not really that interested in having, and we're getting really full. My sensory system is about to be like totally overworked by this stage of the day. We're now tired, we're probably a little bit hungry, but we're not recognizing the hunger now almost because we're so distracted by all these other inputs that have been happening. So if you do have a look into the e-course about happy meal times, we do talk a lot about trying to identify the root causes for the fussy eating. And I just wanted to give that as a good explanation as to where sensory overload can happen for kids, and how even though we might think we've got it all sorted for the day, it all just goes pear-shaped. And that's okay. Meals can go pear-shaped, and that's all right. We just remember this is potentially the reason it's going pear-shaped, and it's not this. It's not me. So take the blame and the guilt off of us and think about this, because this is something we can help address. So that's where a getting ready to eat routine really helps, and I talk about that a lot in the webinar number 3 in the Happy Meal Times e-course. So what I want to talk about tonight is, now that we've worked out why we are sort of there going, no, I just want a piece of toast with Vegemite on it, is coming from, we're in a food rut because we want to go with the easiest thing that I already know how to eat, and I don't want to think about anything else right now. Thank you very much. And that's where we are. That's a food rut. We're basically like, okay, well, if you're only going to eat that, we've got that. Saying this, some children can almost be picking all day long. As much as I've said this is gradual over the day, this is in a typical situation where dinner time is the most difficult time of day. That's potentially what's happened. It's been a whole day. For other children who have a lot of trouble with processing a lot of sensory inputs, they could be up here nearly all day and they're not getting that break that they need. And so they'll be constantly just seeking the easy foods. Also, when kids are sick or having off days, it's potentially a little bit of this, okay? So let's say we are got a food jag. So what I've done is I've got a little guide sheet for you, and I'm going to make that available for you to download as soon as I'm off the webinar tonight. My plan was to have it there ready before we started, but my children did not agree. So it'll be there soon. I just checked. I'm glad everyone is seeing me. So what we've got is a guide here about what to do when your child is stuck in a food jag. So we are approaching this from, let's go with the foods we know and try and expand their range of foods they eat from that point of view. What I can do is talk to you about what we do for a food aversion, where we are blanket, absolutely no, not doing that with that food. That's a little bit of a different technique, but very similar principles, okay? So a food jag. So what I want you to do on the worksheet is to write your start food. So what are you jagging on? So if it's the hot chips or the porridge or the toast or the arrowroot biscuits, things like that that you're not getting past, let's put that up in the top. And then as we work through, we will start to do a couple of things, but we're doing it in a methodical manner. So this might take a little bit of planning on your part to kind of think, no, we're going to proactively work on this, but you don't have to proactively work on every food across every food group and everything like that. You can kind of pick one and just go see how we're going to go with that, and then keep everything pretty much as it was. If we're changing too many things at the same time, you don't know what's making the impacts, especially if we've got already so many sensory inputs happening for the children that vary on scale so much on a daily basis. Sometimes we could have a fluke and we think we've made progress. Other times we've made progress, but we don't realize how good that progress is because we've had such a big day here. So let's not be too hard on ourselves because there's so many unpredictable parts as well. But to give yourself a method to follow, this works really well. So the first thing you can do is have your food that you want to jag on, and at the end we want to put in your desired food. So you'll see we've got all these different steps. So what I've done here is I've actually worked this out from bread through to eating stew with a spoon, so self-feeding as well. So this is a pretty big goal set to try and do. What I've done is I've kind of put in different steps we can do. What I haven't done is put in how long it will take, because obviously as the child goes through each of these steps, sometimes they could stay on that step for all of one meal. Other times it might take you a week of presenting things in different ways. And I've also included a column next to it which tells you the type of food that you're looking for at. So this is a really important thing for me, is to realize that a stew is actually a really difficult thing for children to eat from a sensory point of view and a motor planning point of view, because we're trying to put something in our mouth that's got liquid, it's got mushy vegetables, and it's got potentially, depends how good a cook you have, but some tougher meat inside. So we've got a whole lot of different things happening, and if you've gone and added in some quinoa or some barley or some other grains as well, we've also got some grainy parts to it, or even more so if we put a sprinkle of dukkha or nuts or something on top, there's another texture to add on top. So think about all of these different textures that we've got happening with just the simple bowl of stew. Unless you're cooking your stew until it's all mush and totally puree and there's no difference in any of it, it just goes in the same way and through the mouth, then technically you're feeding a puree, so it's a bit different. But here, stew, we're talking about defined lumps of things. Okay, so we've got bread. Okay, we're happy to eat bread, but we're not eating the stew. How do we go from bread to the stew? So the first thing we've got is having the child control some of the aspects of it. So we're cutting the bread into stars, we're cutting the bread into triangles, I can cut the bread into whatever we want, but letting the child do that. So there's lots of products available online, but for me, I'm so easy with just something like a milk bottle top as a sandwich cutter. You don't have to get all fancy, and you can usually find some reasonably good value ones around anyway. So don't feel like you have to go and spend a lot of money to try and do these shapes. There's nothing wrong with a little plastic knife or something to help you help your children cut things into these shapes. Okay. Then we could move on from bread into something like some mountain bread to cut into stars as well, or we could try some pita breads, just so that we can see we've got different type of breads, but we're also doing the same process of cutting it into stars. After that, we move on to something like peanut butter stars or Nutella stars, or something that we're going to go, okay, we know we're going to get some success or runs on the board, and then we move to other spreads that might be a bit harder. The one I put on there was the Nutella stars, which there is an abundant amount of recipes online for if you want to make your own sugar-free versions of Nutella. So you can use Nutella. Okay, and I have no idea if that term is copyrighted, but it's on a lot of blogs, so go for it. You can use ricotta cheese on top of stars. then we could use a corn thin as a template to make your bread into a circle. So this is getting some interaction with another type of texture. So we're going for what we call a hard mechanical as the corn thin. It's now no longer the soft cube or the soft consistency that the bread was. We've moved on to a hard mechanical. So this is something that goes in the mouth and it crunches, it makes noise, and it takes a little bit more big teeth action. So we want to watch that the kids are biting and cutting with their front teeth and chewing on their side teeth. Showing them as much as you can that process in your mouth, as much as we're all told not to eat with talk with our mouthful, or or eat with your mouth closed. It's fine, but that's actually hard to do when you're trying to learn. So what it is, it's good to actually role model. Hey, did you know this is what's happening in my mouth? Can you get your tongue to move that food under your big teeth? Oh, yeah. So tongue lateralization is a really important skill for kids to master, especially sort of by the age of 2. If we're having troubles with tongue lateralization by then, we're going to find food jags are going to be more popular, and definitely on these easy foods that are just go in and all I got to do is just chew quite quickly, and I don't have to manipulate a hard mechanical around my mouth, or something like a vegetable that has a whole lot of different textures potentially. So then we're going to move on to wholemeal rye breads, try then toast, making a triple decker sandwich with breads and corn thin, like trying to just vary up those textures, moving into dips for your toast and bread. So now you can see what we're doing here to try and get towards our stew. We're trying to introduce some wetter textures with our hard textures, because that's what the stew is, a mixture of textures. And then we are going to offer the bread or toast with the stew for dipping in. Now, just dip today. If they then go and eat the stew, great. We also want to do at the same time, just definitely making sure we've got those motor planning skills able for that self-feeding to happen. And then we're going to make a stew sandwich. Why not? Just to show that these textures can be mixed. And then we're going to work towards having the stew with the spoon. So what I'd recommend for this also is to, you've got your stew that you want the child to eat, maybe freezing it into an ice cube tray so you have little portions. So if you're worried about wastage, you know that you're giving your child a portion of the stew, and you know that that's the same stew they've had experience with, because if we're changing the taste all the time as well as that desired food, that can also be a bit difficult. But if we've got a little portion that we can do and we can have those play times with, I definitely recommend that. And also giving yourself one of those little portions, and I'm like, I'm going to have a stew sandwich too. Role modeling is such an important aspect of helping your fussy eater. So that is all about how to work through a food jag. And like I said, it's not the simplest thing to do, but I've got the worksheet here now for you. You'll be able to download that after the webinar, and hopefully you can get some successes there. If you want a really good amount of information that's a great background into understanding all of that sensory stuff I was talking about, the eating competency, where your family wants to get to for happy meal times, or even if you want tips on meal planning, how to eat healthy on a budget, and to see a couple more comprehensive deep dive webinars where we really talk about fussy eating in particular, I highly recommend that you do the Happy Meal Times e-course. You'll be able to click on the link below this webinar too. So I really hope you enjoyed tonight. It's all about food jagging tonight, but I can do a whole lot of different topics. So definitely stay tuned to my newsletter, and hopefully we will see, or you'll see me again soon. And I'm hoping to do a couple of little freebie things like this throughout the year. Definitely, I'm always open to emails, contacts. I do private classes via Skype. If you want to watch me, let me watch your child eat over Skype. That's a really great way for me to get some really instant feedback about what I'm seeing, how we can work together to find out that root cause for their fussy eating behaviours and give you an action plan. Because like I said, not every child goes through the exact same journey, but chances are there's some underlying root cause that we have got some fantastic tools that I'm more than happy to help you learn and use. Okay, thanks again for coming, and I'll stay on the chat wings box for those who are watching live for a little while. And I'll see you later. Thanks. Bye.